This one. This is the one we're taking today. Sometimes I forget what this car looks like. Like where I never see it.
Yes. Last time we used the Rover was for
a ladder.
Yes.
No, I love this interior.
I do too. Absolutely beautiful. It's amazing that this is the third automotive video.
Yeah, it's already the third, and only the third.
Yeah. It's actually like the 100th, I don't know. I wonder what, like how many videos the channel does have on it.
For some reason I want to say 108.
That's probably correct. We posted 3 videos a week for a while there.
Today we are telling the story of a car that never could be, which is obviously the Disco 2. Backstory, we bought the Disco 2 in 2019, the summer of 2019. It was shaping up to be a wonderful summer, and it still was. The Disco just kind of threw a wrench in some of the plans, which is ironic considering how many wrenches you would need to have fixed that Disco. Let's go. One of the many faces you will make while owning a Disco. I wonder what's wrong with it today. With what?
The Disco, I said that's one of the many faces you'll make with the Disco. You'll say, what's wrong with it today?
Do you have the garage door app?
Yes.
Can you close the garage door?
Yes. Oh, there it goes. Garage door, closing.
It was summer 2019 and it was shaping up to be one of the greatest summers ever. That made it sound like it was an American Pie movie. I guess with the amount of emotional trauma that came from it, it was close. But
a lot less.
Anyway, it was shaping up to be a great summer. It was a great summer. We bought a Disco, started out great. I had a full plan of videos and things didn't go as planned. So backing up a little bit, I felt like by the time we had moved to Florida, I had made as many videos as I could possibly make with Old Faithful, the 2011 L322. I seriously felt like I was uploading the same video every week, just in a different format, saying the exact same words over and over again. It's a great used car if you don't care to put up with the maintenance and you want something that can do everything. And I still firmly believe that. It's a wonderful car if you want something that can do everything and be everything, but you got to put up with the maintenance, and that's that. But I felt like I had said that enough, and I was running out of things to say. I didn't really know what else to do with it. I didn't want to take it off-road. To be completely honest, at the time, I just didn't have the money to fix something if it broke catastrophically on my primary car. Which makes a lot of sense as to why I bought the Disco. Well, anyway, so I felt like I had said everything that I knew to say with this car, and I just wanted to do something different. And I suppose at the time I was feeling a little risky, and I convinced Nick to go in with me and use the company money to buy a used Land Rover. I was running thin on ideas. I didn't know what other content to make. I was very unhappy with the content that we were making for it, and I needed a change. So I convinced Nick to go in with me and buy a used Land Rover. Now, we looked at LR2s, which, thinking about it now, would have been a fantastic option, probably the best thing we could have bought. And we also looked at, I believe, a P38, which would have been a little more catastrophic of a failure because it didn't even start when we got there.
Yeah, the P38 was interesting. He was like, perfect car, amazing car. You know, we asked him, like, will it get back to Daytona? Yeah, it'll get back to Daytona. This goes
it'll
like
do anything. And it's 2 hours away. Yeah. We drive, we go look at it. This thing is falling apart. It is not what the pictures displayed. It's terrible. I was so pissed.
We didn't even test drive.
Yeah, no, we just left. We looked at it for like 5 minutes and we were like, yeah, I don't think this is for us. We'll call you and let you know. We're going to go down the street and get lunch. And down the street and get lunch was 2 hours back home. Daytona, where we called him and said, yeah, we're not interested. It was a catastrophic mess.
Yeah.
That guy traded his L322 in for a Ghibli.
Huh.
I just noticed that.
Wow.
Good for him. I mean, not good for him. I know that offends all of you. And the Ghibli's a terrible car. I wouldn't recommend it, but, you know, upgrading. That's what I meant. Well, not upgrading. Change. Change is good. Except when you buy a Disco. So, yeah, we bought the Disco after looking for a very long time. We ended up going out to Ocala. Was it Ocala?
Yes.
Yeah. It was about an hour and a half away. Middle of July. There was no air conditioning in this Disco, but it didn't matter because the song Africa started playing when we got in the car to test drive it. And I'm sure if you watch that video, you'll remember that moment where you realized these two guys are a lot dumber than you originally thought, which isn't saying much. So at that point, we got in the car and we were just head over heels in love with the idea of having a rugged off-road Discovery 2. And we quickly learned how catastrophic it could be to own a rugged, not very well maintained, rotting frame Disco 2, not L322 Disco 2.
And I do want to say that the reason the middle of the summer part was important and what Patrick said there was because it didn't have air conditioning.
No, it did not have air conditioning. It was 98 degrees, and I think actually it was reading as feeling like 103 degrees that day. And driving through the Florida sun, the heat, it was not a cloudy day. It was a very hot day. It was the hottest point of the day. Driving this thing back on a Florida highway, 2-lane, it was just not working it for me.
I was in the air conditioning, so I don't know what he's on about, really. I was in a nice air conditioning car.
You were in the hoopty. There was hardly anything nice about that car.
Compared to the Disco.
Well, the Disco had nice seats. Had a good interior. That was another thing. We were kind of obsessed with the interior because it had recently been replaced. The person who owned that car, and I don't want to say anything ill of them because they were actually very nice, and we messed up buying the car. But the person who bought it had done a lot of work to the cosmetics, but had completely ignored the frame that was rotted through to the point where you could seriously shove your fist in it. And there were so many problems. Just it was leaking oil the entire way. Ironically, the tow truck driver said it has leaked and is leaking so much oil that it has actually stopped the front of the frame from rusting. It was a mess. So what ended up happening after that point, we took it on a little beach excursion. Our plan was originally to take it to Owner's Day, and I think we both had the thought, okay, let's take it to the beach, make sure it can do something off-road. We didn't because we had driven it up and down A1A, but that's 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. There's nothing too special about that. Any car should be able to do that, even as bad as that one. So we took it to the beach, and we got a beach pass for the year. Which was optimistic.
Yeah, it was, but it was only like $20. Like it wasn't too crazy.
That's right. But it was optimistic to assume that we would be able to use that pass for the entire year.
Yes.
Luckily, they let you transfer it, so that was all good. So we drove it on the first beach, and we were like, this is great, it's going great, it's not overheating, which it had done a few times.
So one thing I do want to say is on the first beach, it was like a very hard, compact sand beach. Like not anything, no reason to use any extra, you know, like...
That's a lot of traffic.
That is a lot of traffic. Any like extra, you know, low range, anything like that. None of that needed because, I mean, it was just, I mean, it was basically like a road almost. Like it was like a gravel road, you know, and that's what the first beach was on. I drove it on that beach. Patrick, I think, drove it some. I drove it some on that beach. And then we went to the more off-road.
It was called the 4x4 beach.
Yeah,
4x4 was required to drive on this beach, and we thought, it's a Land Rover, it'll do it.
It's got 4x4.
Yeah.
It's the best 4x4 by far, actually.
I mean, it didn't get stuck, and the Jeep got stuck.
The Jeep,
you remember that video? The Jeep got stuck.
And in that video, it's funny because I say, the Jeep, like, they come up to us and it's like, we're overheating, we need to get off the beach now. Right? Like, we need to get off the beach. And so we had to, like, get around the Jeep on it. That was funny.
Traumatic, but fun. So anyway, we're driving, we get to the 4x4 beach. They're like, does it have 4x4? And we're like, yes! And so we enter the beach, and we make it probably 10 minutes down, and then I look down and the temperature is going wild. And I'm like, okay, that's not good. We need to pull over and let it cool down. So we pull over, we turn the heat on full blast, it's going, and then I noticed we were having a lot of issues with the transfer case, which my genius self thought, let's put this car that's probably not been in low range in the past 10 years in low range and see what it can do. That was a mistake, because at that point, that's when things started to go horribly wrong. So what ended up happening was, I'm sure if you watched that video, you remember the beeps, and that was it essentially telling me I'm dying. And it was overheating like crazy. The transfer case had just completely gone. It kept slipping out of whatever gear it was in and completely losing all power whatsoever to the drivetrain. So we figured at that point, whoa, this is like an off-road excursion. Okay. So we get it off the beach finally, put it in park, and then that's when I knew. That's when I knew there was no saving it.
Yeah, and I think it was when you put it in park too, it just sounded like death. Like
metal was just shattering all over the place, and I knew it was done.
Yeah.
Got the tow truck, got it towed back to the house, all of that. But we never even tried to fix it. And I don't think we ever talked about this. We never even figured out what was wrong with the car.
And it's funny, we never even had the conversation of, do you want to fix it? I don't even think we even ever had that conversation.
So what happened in those hours while waiting on a tow truck was we didn't say much, we didn't speak to each other much, but I knew at that point I was out. I had lost my passion for it, not Land Rovers, just making stupid videos. I had lost my desire to do it anymore. I was already having a lot of trouble trying to figure out how to keep this going, and I made the wrong choice, and it was like the nail in the coffin. I just couldn't bring myself to do it anymore.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think you had put a lot of your faith in the ability to build the channel, if you will, into that disco, and then when it didn't work out, you took that very personally, I think. And see, one of the things that you guys don't know, so we have the gaming brand and we have the automotive brand, and it just so happens to fall, especially more back then than today. Today we kind of all work on everything, but back in the day it was very much so. I was more primary on the gaming brand, Patrick was more primary on the automotive brand. Yeah. And so, you know, everything split 50-50 in the back end, but that's how, you know, like work-wise, that's how it was laid out. And like I said, I think he kind of felt, I think, because I remember us having these conversations, that like there was faith put in him to be able to champion this brand with the disco, and then that didn't work out. And I think it was very discouraging, and it kind of like
it really affected me negatively. Yeah. And add to that, one of our other businesses was ramping up heavily at the time. Yeah. I mean, went 4x the revenue it was doing the previous month, and it was going crazy. And I felt like at that time I really needed to step up and do more with this brand. And for the next 2 years, that's what we did.
Yeah.
And we built it to a point where it was doing incredibly well. But at the time, another reason we never looked into fixing the disco was the automotive channel was producing about 1% of our total monthly income. Yeah. And it was paying for the Range Rover's payment, but it was certainly not at the time paying for anything more than that. Yeah. And I started to feel the pressure that I needed to make up for this disaster that I caused. And all I knew to do was to buckle down into what was working really well and make it work.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember that I had to, I don't want to say convince you, but like I remember like making a point, like I wanted you to post that final disco video, because I don't think you wanted to post it there for a while. And then we kind of, it was like, go ahead, I think it's good to post this, and then just forget it, you know, like post it, and if you don't log into the channel for, you know, ever again, post this video. And yeah, so
this is kind of a dual video. It's why we stopped posting, but it's also what happened to the disco. Mm-hmm. They kind of go hand in hand, and I think it kind of comes off in the videos that like buying the disco killed the channel. That that like completely like financially ruined us, and it didn't. It was what, 10% of what we had at the time,
yeah,
like in cash. So it was a substantial amount. I mean, 10%, you feel that definitely, but it wasn't life crippling.
Yeah, and it was though enough to where we knew that we weren't gonna dump a bunch of money into it too. I think that was one of those things.
It needed a new frame. It needed a new, who knows what else.
And looking at it today, we could maybe justify a little more.
But I still to this day wouldn't.
Yeah, like, see, I think what would be better is to get a better frame disco and build around the good frame.
No.
but no, I think just like forgetting that it's a disco or whatever.
Going back in time.
Yeah, like the better thing to do would be get a good frame disco, even if it had mechanical damage or whatever issues. Get something that's got a good frame that doesn't have rust on it, decent body panels, and decent, less rust. Can't put your hand through it, rust. Decent body panels and a decent interior, and pay a little more than what we paid. Even if the mechanics are probably shit, the electrics are probably shit, but they can be worked on, they can be fixed. It's hard to fix rust, you know, that much rust. I mean, we're talking significant amounts.
It wasn't like surface rust.
Yeah,
it was corroded through the frame.
And like, that was one of those things. I don't know why we didn't think about that at the time. I don't know what, like, I don't know. But.
So, I'll be honest, I know the reason, and we discussed this. We wanted to have a cosmetically good looking car for the channel.
Ah, yeah, that makes sense.
We didn't care too much about what was going on underneath, because the plan was to only ever keep it 6 months.
That was the plan.
And
6 days is what actually happened.
Yeah. This is a good 6 days. It is a good 5 days.
How long was it? It was.
Yeah, it was less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was less than 2 weeks. It was more than a week, less than 2 weeks. So sometime in probably that 7 to 10 day range there.
Yeah. It was hard. It was a very difficult time, and I did not like. I don't know. Like, I don't want to make this dramatic. It's funny. Like, looking back at it now, I'm like, that was the stupidest thing you did that month.
Yeah.
But it's like a few $1,000s. Whatever, you know, like, mistakes happen. You do things that don't necessarily make sense. It was far from my biggest mistake even previously, so.
I will say this too. I think the disco and our experience with rust on that car really saved us in the future, because we looked at when we were trying to buy the BMW 5 Series that we have, we were looking at a bunch of different BMWs. One of being was an X5. That was amazing mechanically, had it actually PPI'd, and the rust on it was so bad that we didn't purchase it. And I think the disco for me was some of that trauma came back.
Yeah.
It was
well, the mechanic said the rust is so bad I would not work on the suspension.
Yeah.
And he worked on those cars, and I was like,
oh god, it's a new 4 Series. Oh god.
So when a mechanic tells you this car is fantastic mechanically, the electrics are good, it's got so much rust I wouldn't touch it to work on suspension work. I was like, well, okay, it's a big SUV, it will inevitably need suspension work. I'm not wasting my time. But you're right. I mean, like, that trauma came out, and it was like, let's not even do that.
and it's, you know, now pushing, like I said, I would, if I was to buy a disco again, would get one that, you know, it's going to have mechanical issues, you know it's going to have electrical issues, but if you can get one that doesn't have rust, doesn't have body damage and things like that,
it's easier to get going.
Build on it, you know.
I am incredibly thankful that we stopped doing the videos, because that allowed me to gain perspective, and I really had to take a step back at the time and go, is this something I still love? And it took me a couple of years, and throughout that time I thought about it every week. It was very hard at first once the Breakdown and Breakdown Craft started to like settle down. At that point it became very hard for me, because I felt like I had nothing. And not in a way like I have no money or anything, but in a way of like, I feel like my purpose is gone, because I had just stopped what I was doing to make sure that this thing had the support it needed to grow. And thank God we did, because look at everything we were able to accomplish because of that.
Yeah, and it's funny, because now we have the perspective. We can look back and say, because the automotive channel shut down, because we put so much, like you came in and put so much time into Breakdown Craft and into the Breakdown, And we were able to build that to what we were. We were able to build the cash up to be able to purchase the Aston and the Rolls Royce, and now, and even the 5 Series, and my BMW, and come back with all these cars and truly have a fleet of cars.
And fix this car.
Yeah, and fix this car and get a video out of it. You know, I mean, so it's, and now, see, this is the different thing too. Let's say I was to go buy a Mercedes, for example, and it was to have a catastrophic issue on it on the first week I bought it. I would.
Are you buying a 2007 S-Class?
I don't plan to, but won't rule it out. But we instead of shutting down and not posting, what I think we would do is make content about it. And we would talk about that experience, figure it out, you know, if we were doing the repairs, we'd cover that. If we weren't doing the repairs, we'd talk about why and what we were doing. So, yeah.
I feel like the 2-year sabbatical gave us enough time to, one, gain perspective and think about the videos and the content that we actually want to create, which is helpful. Newer videos, this one is kind of a mix, but newer videos are going to be a bit more focused on both of us rather than just one of us, which was always a problem. I always felt like the videos would do a lot better if it had 2 personalities in them, because you can say to a point that the videos are about the cars.
Full-size Range Rover.
There's an L405 over there. You can say to a point that the videos are about the cars.
There's a Cayenne too.
And they are. But there's so much content online about these cars that really, where you stand out is the personalities on camera. And at least that's how I feel. And the great thing is I'm now in a place where I understand if other people feel otherwise, they can just watch something else. It's taken a lot of time to be able to diversify our car portfolio to a point where I feel like we can actually post videos, if that makes sense. Like, when it was just the Range Rover, it was hard to put out the same video every week about the same car, talking about the same things without feeling like I wanted to drown in wallpaper paste. And the hilarious part about it was, no matter how much I uploaded about the L322, it got tons of views.
Yeah, people still watch.
I was just saying the same thing over and over again, and yet no one ever pointed it out. They pointed out that I looked like Kelly Clarkson's brother, but they never pointed out that I was saying the same thing over and over for 2 years.
One thing that's funny to me is even coming back, we posted a video of the L322 first, and then we posted one of a race of the Aston and the Rolls. And the L322 video performed significantly better than the Aston and Rolls video. I'm like, okay, we're building a new audience, that's fine, no big deal. It's just funny because of, well, how that just plays out. To me, the Aston and the Rolls are cooler than an L322. I know I'll be persecuted for this.
Well, it's one of those things, there's so much more content available about the L322 that you would think a little more niche of a car. I mean, I've searched. There is no content available about a first generation Goodwood Ghost. I mean, nothing aside from people saying it's a BMW.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw a comment like that the other day, and somebody responded, "How many Rolls Royces do you have?" I was like, "That's funny."
It's a little pompous.
Oh, but that's I thought that was funny. Yeah,
it's one of those things. Like it's just crazy, and it's taken a lot of time for me to be able to look at stuff like that and just be like, whatever. But yeah. So that's kind of what happened to the Disco. It just kind of came to the point where it wasn't worth fixing, and I had other things I needed to prioritize, and I also had no idea what else to make about the L322, and I hated the hoopty, so I didn't really have much to say about that.
But what did happen to the Disco? What did we do with it?
Okay, so we moved. About that house that we were in at the time was, well, let's just say, I'm sorry you had to look at it.
Yeah, it's horrible.
So we ended up moving about a month later to a house a mile up the road. Beautiful 4-bed, 2-bath, pool house, covered lanai pool, gorgeous house. And it did serve us very well, but after we kept both houses for about a month, and then we had to figure out what to do with the Disco. So, as you do, we had it pulled from the yard, which was comical to watch. I've never seen a car be pulled out of the grass like that. We had it pulled from the yard, and we had it dropped in the driveway. And we let a charity company come pick it up. So what ended up happening was the car sat there for like a month, and we went, we really need to get rid of this thing. I don't feel comfortable selling it to anyone. It's a mechanical turd. So I don't feel right having someone else take it. Even if they know what they're doing, I don't feel good about it. So we found a charity that will take the car, and then they will sell it at auction, and whatever they sell it for, they get to keep. And then we get to write off the amount it sells for on our taxes. So I felt like we did a little bit of good with it. A charity got, I think, around $1,000.
Yeah.
And I got to see pictures of it one last time at the auction block, and I felt like something good came out of the disco because we were able to donate it to a charity who was able to use it. Well, not use it, but
use the funds from it.
yeah. And I felt good about that.
Yeah, and I think that way, you know, it was sold at an auction as is. You know, it's blown up, no big deal. That's part of it. You know, so
yeah, that's what happened to the disco. This turned into a 30-minute video.
yeah, it's kind of long.
That's what we do.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's the disco story.
That's the disco story. That's what happened to the channel. They're related yet unrelated at the same time.
Yep. And now we're back.
We are back. And I'm excited to create the first video that I feel like is the real new format, because I've promised this in the first video back, and it's still not quite that time yet. But I think the Rolls video that's coming up will be. So,
yeah.
At least the future ones will be.
What's the Rolls video about?
Well, the Rolls broke.
The Rolls broke.
It still has a temp tag. It broke in the first month.
So there will be a video on that.
I just hope we get the plate in by the time it makes its way back, because
Yeah.
the temp tag expires on the 31st of this month.
Yes.
And it's the 2nd.
Yes.
And they said, Atlanta said, prepare for the car to be there a while. Anyway, whatever. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts on the disco. What did you think happened to the channel in the disco when all that went down at the same time? I'm sure it was probably comical from a third-party perspective, seeing this guy on a disco. It ruined him. And to a point, yeah. I still have dreams about it. But, I don't know. It's time for a new Land Rover. Not to get rid of this one, but it's time for something new for the channel and for the family. But yeah,
all right.
I'm at Walmart to pick up something for the family, so yeah. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next video for the new format that you still don't know what it is yet. And I don't know how to explain it. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. See you next week.